Looking to find out what's happening on the NDSU campus? Watch Bison Information Network News every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on Cable 1 Channel 70. This student-run weekly newscast covers relevant news and current events, entertainment, Bison sports, and more. Watch BIN News Fridays at 9 p.m., Saturdays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., and Sundays at 9 a.m. on Cable 1 Channel 70.
Bison Information Network News is brought to you in partnership with Cable 1.
Everyone, and welcome to another edition of X's and O's. I'm Jay Lennader.
And I'm Eric Bunnell.
And we've got plenty to talk about today. We'll be going over the NDSU football team, the NFL, and talking about the NBA for the first time in this X's and O's season. But let's start off with NDSU football, Eric, a game in the Fargo Dome that was much closer than most people suspected between NDSU and Youngstown State.
Yeah, you know, that game shouldn't have been as close as what it was. There was plenty of key drops. Plenty of execution errors on NDSU. Coach Kleiman alluded to it in his post-game press conference. They just didn't execute very well. The offense wasn't in sync. Christian Watson dropped a easy 50-yard catch from Easton Stick at about the 5-yard line, sets them up for another score. It could have been 24-7 there. But, man, it was just ugly.
On both sides, too. Youngstown State had a bad catch. I was working earlier, so I only got there like right at the end of the first half just to see a whole bunch of chaos take place. So it's like I start listening on the radio on 1660. The first thing I hear is that dropped catch that would have been the easy touchdown for Youngstown State. That would have made it 7-7. And then the second thing I hear coming back out of the grocery store, picking up some groceries, was them making that spike at the end of the first half. So I was like, wow, this is really going
that
rough.
Spike even had me confused. I thought they had the first down.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I don't have to record this. He got the spike, so they're just going to spike it on first down. So why do I need to record it? Well, it was fourth down, and I missed that play. It happens, but whatever. I mean, you're not all perfect shooting highlights anyways.
Yeah, it's just how it happens. But the game was really, like you said, rough on both sides. NDSU, of course, ended up getting the victory, as you might expect them to do so. But, you know, it was a rough test, and I think the first sort of sign of weakness that this Bison team has really shown, and that every other game it's been like there's maybe been some down spots, but by the end of the game it's like, oh, they make up with it with a 28-point quarter against Western Illinois or Northern Iowa.
It was the first time they were really in a 4-quarter fight. Mm-hmm. And the last time was South Dakota State at home to kick off Missouri Valley play. And now they go to Missouri State. Mm-hmm. Team very tough to play. But I just don't know what to make of this team because it's like as their quarterback goes, they go. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like in the NFL. As Tom Brady goes, the Patriots goes. As Aaron Rodgers goes, the Packers go. I just don't know what to make of this team coming up. I mean, NDSU's favored by 30.5. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to be a 10-point game.
Yeah, I saw Missouri State when they came to the Fargo Dome last year. That was like one of the only games I went to. And they looked pretty good. That option offense, it gives this Bison team fits. And the Bison have been known to sort of struggle against these dual-threat quarterbacks who can, and in these sort of option systems. And I do think that this is going to be another tough game for them, especially with it being on the road. Because, you know, this Missouri State team, it's not bad.
Yeah, they're not terrible. They beat Celtic. They beat a ranked team early on in the year. I don't remember who. It was so far away. Yeah. They played South Dakota State tough. Or they played South Dakota tough. It was like 35-28. Maybe that's who they beat when they were ranked 24. But I just don't know. This dual-threat quarterback, NDSU has fits with him. Taryn Christian, he always gives the Bison fits. I just don't know what to make. This NDSU team, could they be getting fatigued a little bit maybe at the end? I know Kleiman said that they're starting to cut back kind of on things and more team meetings, more walkthroughs, so they're not really beating each other up because they've been playing physical football for the last 10 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's been a lot. Not 10, but because they had a bye the first game into the season. So about 8 straight games they've been playing physical football.
And I think that's kind of what we saw with this Youngstown State game. That's kind of the biggest takeaway is it's like this team – It sort of needs to get a refresh in that there was a lot of mistakes made. It was a much closer game than people thought, even though it was in the Fargo Dome. and it's time for sort of that, try and get that second wave of energy. And I think that's the biggest thing to look at with this Missouri State game is do the Bison come out and get revenge for being so slow the week before, or do we continue to see them make some mistakes that they then need to try and fix the next week?
I think it's going to depend on the atmosphere there, really. If Missouri State doesn't really draw a crowd and the Bison have to make their own noise, I think they'll win by 40 like you saw in Western. But other than that, I don't know. I mean, and then the week before they go on a bye, they play Southern Illinois. And they've almost got the 1 seed locked up right now.
Yeah.
We can all agree with that. And then everybody else behind them, as we've been saying every week, it's just a dumpster fire. As we saw this past week of JMU losing to a two-win Rhode Island team. Ooh.
Yeah.
That was embarrassing, but I just don't know.
Yeah, everything behind the Bison in first place is just such a mess.
I mean,
don't know what happened. Indiana State is
in playoff contention. They win two. They were so bad last year. They win 2 games and they're in the playoffs. I mean, they're maybe not in the playoffs. They're on the bubble. They're in contention. But we got one team I want to talk about with you, James Madison. We mentioned it just a little bit ago. Where do they end up? Do they get seeded or do they go to Thanksgiving weekend?
Man, I don't know. Honestly, the way this last loss would make you say that they might drop out of things, which with how things have been the past couple of years is almost unthinkable because it was always just the Bison and JMU the past 2 years. That was the matchup. You knew it was happening in the finals, and that was the big game everyone's looking forward to. Now, even if that happens, I don't know if that's the game anymore, is it?
JMU is just there's no passing game there. Brian Shore was there last year, and he led that team to that national championship game. But he also had some running backs behind him. This year they have no passing game. You can load up the box and make that quarterback try to beat you, which is what Rhode Island did, and they were successful in it.
And another thing that's interesting in looking at JMU is just showing how impressive NDSU's run has been over these past couple of years. Because JMU, they had really two big years. Last 2 years they've been incredible. They beat the Bison, and they won the national championship the year the Bison streak was broken. And then, of course, they made it all the way to the national championship to play them stride for stride before the NDSU team took it at the end of the game. But NDSU continues to just
dominate,
get great teams and have insane depth, get great players. But it just shows how amazing this NDSU dynasty has been over the past couple of years, that they've been able to sustain it.
It's the recruiting depth that they have. And when they lost to JMU 2 years ago, it was they didn't have depth because they lost. They had injuries. So many people get injured, and now they have depth, and you're seeing that all pay off.
Yeah, well, moving on, NDSU's season will be interesting to continue to watch, especially as it seems that all competition like JMU has fallen away. But let's move on to the NFL. And there's one particular matchup that is of note from last night, and that was the New England Patriots versus the Green Bay Packers. We talked about it briefly last week on X's and O's, talking about how it was going to be Brady versus Rodgers. And it seemed to be a pretty definitive statement in the matchup between those two quarterbacks.
Both quarterbacks, and I can say this with the utmost confidence, both quarterbacks played awful. Brady had 7 straight incompletions. Rodgers just, I don't know what happened. He wasn't in sync with the offense after that Rams game, and I was like, they played the Rams within 2 points. New England gets blown out by this team. I just don't know what happened. Once again, another fumble, another costly fumble. That Green Bay's driving to score, and it could be 24-24, and we have a fourth quarter shootout on our hands. I just don't know what happened.
Yeah, it just kind of fell apart. And
it was just like Green Bay's offense they're not there yet. They were there the first game of the year against Chicago. They were there against Minnesota, but after that, they kind of just fell flat.
Yeah, and I think it's worth taking another look, as we did last week, at the NFC North. After another crazy week, we had one interdivision game between the Vikings and Lions. Vikings taking it fairly strongly,
Yeah.
but not a huge margin of victory for them. It was a good win if you watched it, but the scoreboard wouldn't have said so. The Vikings defense really came through. 10 sacks, yeah.
Franchise record.
Yep.
That was a dominant game by the Vikings, and that's kind of what they needed. Now they're going into their bye week.
Mm-hmm.
They come back.
They play the Bears after the bye.
They play the Bears Sunday night. Mm-hmm. And then a week later, they got Green Bay Sunday night at home.
Yep.
That's 2 physical games right there.
2 very important games. These are key games. The Bears may be less so because they do get the Bears one more time, but both of these games are huge.
Any divisional game is huge. Coming down the stretch right now, they're in the wild card. You need to beat the Bears once. Is that a game in Chicago? Or is it in Minneapolis?
I believe it's in Chicago.
Okay, then that would be why they flexed it to Sunday night, because that makes sense. Why would you have Minnesota be on primetime 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah.
The thing about Chicago is Minnesota's always been given fits in Chicago, no matter what team they brought in.
Even when the Bears haven't been great, and now the Bears are back.
And Khalil Mack is going to be the key there. I mean, I know the Bears had their bye. Trubisky's coming off a good week. They're coming off a blowout of the Bills. I don't know who they play this week, and I don't really care because it's Chicago, because they're probably going to falter late like they always do. Or Minnesota's going to falter late, one of the two. And the thing that's got me keyed in on a little bit is the Vikings' remaining schedule. They have a game against New England at Foxborough and a game against Seattle in Seattle. I think that's going to determine whether they can win the division or not right there.
Oh, absolutely. This coming out of the bye, the stretch of 4 games will ultimately determine how good this Vikings team actually is, because all of these teams are good teams. All of these teams have been competitive this year. The Bears, comeback story, Trubisky, Khalil Mack sort of leading the ball on each side. Rodgers, obviously, always a tough matchup for the Vikings, as shown earlier this season when he was on one leg and still kept up with them. And then, of course, Brady. If you can't beat Drew Brees, you can't beat Jared Goff in L.A. Those are the 2 biggest losses because they're the 2 biggest opponents the Vikings have had this year. If you can't take wins in those games, you've got a chance to redeem yourself against Brady and Russell Wilson.
I think that game in Seattle is going to be super tough.
Foxborough,
no matter what, New England's going to be tough.
Yeah, all of them are going to be super tough for the Vikings. And it's really going to be the key determiner of if the Vikings make the playoffs or maybe even miss them.
And I want to go back to that New England-Green Bay game. It was like 4th and 21. Mm-hmm. And Green Bay got flagged for roughing the punter. I would say that's more running into the punter, because roughing the punter, you're supposed to run into the plant leg. Mm-hmm. He clearly did not run into his plant leg. Mm-hmm. He went for the dive. Yes, he missed, but he tried to pull up. And I'm not just saying this as a Packer fan. There's a whole bunch of people who thought that should have just been a 5-yard penalty. 4th and 16, so you re-kick. Or New England just declines that you get the ball. 5 yards ain't gonna make a difference on a punt whether you go for it or not. Now, if it was 4th and 6, can go to 4th and 1, that would have made a big difference. But that was kind of like the game changer right there. Mm-hmm. Green Bay's really been getting robbed by refs all year.
Yeah, and that's sort of something we've seen in the NFL as a whole all year, is that there's a bunch of penalty calls that have been controversial that have really been the game-changing thing in each determining game, that there would be some penalty that is in nature controversial that teams are going to argue about, that have been changing things. And it's hard to really say that we can, because this has kind of been a thing in the NFL for a while, in most sports for a while.
It just happens.
It just happens, but it really seems to be prevalent this year with some of the rule changes that we saw happen in the offseason, especially the roughing the passer one. That's kind of died down a little bit as teams have figured out how to not fall on them and whatnot.
That died down after you saw so many people complain.
Yeah.
So many coaches complain, like, how is that roughing the passer? We saw players come out and say, like Kirk Cousins, when he got hit by Clay Matthews, saying that wasn't roughing the passer. Mm-hmm. That's why that died down. So I just think that the flags are going to go away, and the refs just that Sunday night game, I wish the refs would have just swallowed their whistles and just let the team split. Call the obvious penalties. Call the obvious pass interference. But if it's close, just let them play.
Well, we'll have to just see as it keeps moving forward. You can't really do anything about the officiating in any sport, no matter what side of the ball you're
McCarthy.
on. But when we come back, we'll be talking all about the NBA, taking a look at what's been going on there when we come back.
conveniently located across the street from NDSU's campus, Herd and Horns is the place to go, whether you're looking for a fantastic meal or just a quick bite to eat.
Hi, welcome to Herd and Horns. Are you from the drink right away?
With friendly staff and excellent service, it's a restaurant for all ages. Herd and Horns, your home for great food and Bison sports. Welcome to Bison Block. If you are an NDSU student, you know it well. It's located right across the street from campus. How would you like to live in the same building as Starbucks, Jimmy John's, and Herd and Horns? Bison Block offers high-quality apartments at a very affordable price. For more information, go to our website at bisonblockfargo.com to apply today.
Welcome back to X's and O's, and now we jump from all things football to the NBA, and the biggest storyline in the NBA over the first couple weeks of the season is Jimmy Butler and his non-consistent rest. And Jay, I know you and I were just talking. What's your thoughts on that Jimmy Butler and him just kind of wanting a trade?
Well, obviously, as a Timberwolves fan, it's disappointing because you kind of knew this was going to happen. When the trade happened, it was like, oh, Thibodeau, finally, yes, he's bringing his style. He brought a superstar, a legitimate superstar to Minnesota, and things were going to completely change. And we saw them make the playoffs, and everything was great until everything started going downhill all summer long, talking about all these reports coming out about how all the players hate each other. And but through all of that, it was never Jimmy's going to leave. It was always just like, maybe do they trade Wiggins because Jimmy Butler doesn't like playing with him? What happens with this? When he finally came out and said it, it was just Minnesota sports top to bottom. It was so classic Timberwolves that it was unbelievable. You give up. I'm not that mad about the trade itself because it brought a jolt of energy to the fan base and the team that was missing for a while. And it made that year where everything was just going through was fine. It was great. Jimmy Butler is so fun to watch as a player. He really busts his butt every single day out there playing. And even still in the games that he's playing this year, he's so fun to watch. He's such a great player. But, man, it's just to know that they could have had Lauri Markkanen next to Karl Anthony Towns, and they could have kept Zach LaVine. LaVine and Dunn I'm not as mad about. It's Lauri Markkanen, the fact that we had to give him up as a part of that deal, that really makes me mad about the whole thing because we should have seen this coming. It's one of those retrospective things that it's like, oh, yeah, of course Jimmy Butler's going to leave after. He's only got 2 years left on his contract. Of course he's not going to want to stay. But it's aggravating in that sense. But looking at this actual team, I've been watching pretty much every game this year because that's the funny thing about the whole Jimmy Butler situation. It's made me care more about this team than I did before. Like it's kind of fun to watch everything going around, and it's the reason I was watching when Derrick Rose scored 50 points because this team is interesting now. All the drama sort of elevates the thing. Even though the basketball hasn't been great at times, especially when Jimmy decides not to play, honestly, this team's still pretty fun to watch and has a lot of talent on it. But Jimmy Butler leaving because of that, I think it's a good thing. It needs to happen, but I don't fault them for waiting on trying to get the best deal.
And it's not like their team is that bad.
No.
I understand it's a young season. They're 4-5. Yes, they got blown out by some teams.
Yeah, 4-6 now after last night.
4-6. I thought it was 4-5. That's still not terrible. Last year, the Cavs started out 4-6 with LeBron, and he led them to the finals. This year, the Lakers are 4-6. LeBron's probably going to lead them. Yeah, probably not. Let's not push. I think he'll get to the conference finals, but we can discuss that another day. But I still think the Timberwolves, even without Jimmy Butler, I still think they're a top 12 team in the West. I'll say top 10. I think they're going to be contending for a bottom seed in the playoffs like they were last year.
I think so too. But I think they have to find the right trade in order to do so. It has become apparent over the last couple games, especially last night, where they got trounced by the Trailblazers. It was bad from top to bottom. Horrible game for the Timberwolves. And I think it's become apparent that they need to get a replacement in the starting lineup for Jimmy Butler in whatever trade they make. The one of the reported trades, one of the last ones that came out was to Houston. Obviously, they're not going to do that deal because they don't want to give another Western team a super team. But that team, they were talking about giving 4 first-round draft picks back and then some throwaway players in Brandon Knight and Marquise Chris. But what they really need is something, maybe not 4 first-round picks, but something like a 2 or 3 when getting a key player back like an Eric Gordon. Someone who could come into the lineup, start, and actually give them solid minutes. And three-point shooting. The biggest reason why I think Jimmy Butler, it would be fine for the Timberwolves if they left, is because whoever they replace him is likely going to be a better three-point shooter. He has his nights like against the Lakers where he hits 6, including the key game-winning shot. But on average, he's not a great three-point shooter. He's a better driver, pull-up, step-back shooter. He's not a good three-point shooter, and that's the one thing the Timberwolves need. Karl Anthony Towns is the best three-point shooter on the Timberwolves, and he's their center. It's been that way for like the past 2 years. It's not acceptable, and that's really the thing they need to find is they need to find a veteran three-point shooter, also get some draft picks or some prospects back. But I think once that happens and that trade is made, this team is probably better than with currently having Jimmy Butler. Because the players like Josh Okogie, their rookie, he's been outstanding. He's one of the top rebounding rookies in the entire NBA. He plays as hard as Jimmy Butler. He leads the league in rookie steals. He's a great player who fits into their rotation better. And the depth this Timberwolves team has is far better than what they had last year. So I think if they trade Jimmy Butler and they get a good deal, this team will be as good, if not better, moving forward.
So come April, and you're talking about here, I might not be here, so you're talking about this. Are the Timberwolves in the playoff contention, or are they kind of sliding their way out and tanking? I don't necessarily want to say tanking, but they're going for a little better chance at a lottery pick.
I think it's tough to say right now because we don't know what they're going to get back for Butler. It's an inevitability that they trade him. He wants out. This whole general soreness thing is because he doesn't want to play.
It's just stupid.
It's fine because we don't really want him to play anyway because he could get hurt and then we get nothing for him, which is the worst case scenario, worse than having to trade him. But because, I mean, thank God he says this now than saying it at the end of the year when we're in contract negotiations. He's like, well, I'm gone, and we get nothing for him. I'd rather have it happen the way it has than that happen. So it's a blessing in disguise in that way. In terms of your question, it's hard to say depending on who they get back for him. But right now, I want to say they're in contention but ultimately won't make it. Because Karl Anthony Towns has been playing way better when Butler's not playing, but last night that wasn't the case. And Karl Anthony Towns is still young. He's only a year older than me.
Yeah, he's very young. Came out of Kentucky.
And Wiggins has been okay, but more has been basing efficiency on actually getting bigger numbers, which is good for some reasons, but we kind of need some scoring from someone, which is why having Derrick Rose score 50 is going to win them some games. They need volume scoring, and they need three-point shooting, because their defense hasn't been bad all the time. It's had its moments of being bad, but their defense is getting better with players like Okogie bringing energy and them getting some okay rebounding. But if they can figure out how to rebound and they can get a better three-point shooter at some point and just sort of end up fleshing out the depth that they do have and just get this team more cohesive with the chemistry, they have a chance at the playoffs. It will be like last year where it's either the 7th or 8th seed, but it's only a chance. And right now, just because of how bad last night was, I'm going to say they're not going to make it, but it's still completely up in the air right now.
So I think we're all in agreement that Golden State gets the 1.
Oh yeah.
Houston gets the 2.
Maybe. Honestly, with
Utah.
Yeah,
maybe Utah.
I kind of like Utah. I kind of like San Antonio, and Oklahoma City. I don't see them as the 2, but they're also going to be up there.
So it's Golden State, and I'm just gonna for 2 through 5 is going to be Houston, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and Utah.
I think so.
And then 6, 7, and 8.
6 would be the Lakers. I think 6 or 7 is going to be the Lakers because LeBron will ultimately sort of start taking control. They had a rough start, but it hasn't been sort of like with the Timberwolves. It hasn't been that bad to sort of count them out of it yet. I think just because LeBron's on that team, they'll make the playoffs.
Denver as a 6 or 7.
I like Denver. And then there are some surprises that are really going to make it tough at the bottom.
8 for the Trailblazers?
Specifically between the Trailblazers, the LA Clippers, and the Sacramento Kings.
Oh, yeah, they're playing off. They just got smoked yesterday.
They got smoked yesterday, but they've been having some strong games. De'Aaron Fox is really starting to come out as a superstar. That's a big point. Marvin Bagley, I mean, he's been okay, but he sort of solidifies that position. They've got really strong depth at the big man position, and getting Nemanja Bjelica off the Timberwolves, obviously the failed situation with the 76ers, he's been playing great. This is what most Timberwolves fans knew they could get out of Bjelica if he just decided to shoot the ball. Mm-hmm. Because for some reason Dave Yeager has been able to instill the lesson upon him that if you're open, you're a good three-point shooter, shoot the ball. But he's been doing everything. He's been shooting and passing just as well as we knew he could in Minnesota, and just the combination of players and Buddy Hield's been playing great. That team has as easily as good of a chance of making the playoffs as the Timberwolves.
So we just spent probably 10 minutes talking about the West. So let's now quickly run through the East.
Okay.
And we
sort of an easier conversation, too.
Yeah, and we just said the Kings got smoked. Mm-hmm. Well, they got smoked by the Bucks by 35.
Yep.
144 to 109. Giannis' second triple-double of the season. They jacked up. They hit a franchise record 23s last night. Mm-hmm. And I know they lost to the Celtics last Thursday, and they played it bad. Yeah. And I mean, that was probably their worst game. They lost by 4.
Yep.
Is this team up there to go for the 1? Man. And they played Toronto, who smoked the Lakers without Kawhi. Mm-hmm. And in that game, the Bucks and Raptors were without Giannis and Kawhi. Mm-hmm. And they smoked them.
Yeah, honestly, my honest opinion is the Bucks are the firm 3 seed. They are good. They're going to be at the top of the East. There's no doubt about that. This Raptors team, I think if anyone passes the Celtics, it's the Raptors. They have been outstanding this year. Just the way they're playing, just everything about that team, they have been fantastic. I mean, when Kawhi's not playing, obviously they're not going to be as strong. But this team's scary. Like last year, it's like, oh yeah, they set a whole bunch of franchise records and wins and whatnot, but then they end up getting beat by LeBron. I don't see that happening this year. That doesn't happen this year. The Raptors are really scary this year, as scary as the Celtics, in my opinion. Those are the 2 teams I see as the 1 and 2 in the East. I think the Bucks were going to have to settle for 3, which is still a good deal. It's going to get you a matchup against one of those
last
teams.
Year.
Yeah, it's going to get
you go to 3.
I think they're 3, and then the 76ers are 4.
And right now the Bucks are 1 in the East.
Yeah.
I mean, they only have 1 loss because they lost to the Celtics, as we said, because it was just bad.
Yeah.
against the Celtics, and Celtics have like 3 losses. The Sixers aren't playing their best ball.
No, but
Raptors are playing really well.
Oh yeah, I think the one thing about the Sixers to watch is that if they start showing interest, they are a contender in the Butler sweeps. Just because they're a team that they're not as good as they thought they were going to be. They've got some pieces to move. If they decide, maybe we could deal Fultz or one of the prospects they have, plus a first-round pick. If they get Butler, it's a different team. It's definitely a different look. They're still not a great three-point shooting team because, like we've said, Butler's not the best three-point shooter. But if they add him, it creates a different dynamic for sure. But regardless, I think they're that extra team in the East.
So in the East, you think Celtics, Raptors, Bucks as 1, 2, 3. Sixers as the 4.
Is 4.
Who would be the 5 out there? Miami?
I would say Detroit.
Oh yeah, Detroit's playing pretty well.
I would say Detroit. Detroit is not a team that's going to be able to beat like the 76ers. Obviously, we just saw that matchup and they got whomped by Embiid.
Embiid's got real estate in Andre Drummond's
Oh
head.
yeah, and I think that continues. I don't think Detroit's going to be able to contend with those other teams, but compared to other teams in the East, I think Detroit's really good, so I'd say they're my 5, yep.
6, Miami maybe?
6 could be Miami.
Who would be 7 and 8? I don't even know who they would be. I mean, the East is just so bad.
Comparatively to the West, absolutely. It's going to be some team that comes out and surprises us, like the Knicks. The Knicks could come back. The Hawks and the Knicks are a really interesting team to watch that were very bad last year.
Yeah.
But I think both of those teams could easily be in contention. But the top of the East, I would say, is pretty solid.
MVP in each division, East and West, as of right now.
Man, as of right now, I want to say in the East, Kawhi Leonard.
Ooh.
In the West, it's tough, but I'm going to have to say probably Curry.
Yeah, I think you and I can agree on the West and Curry. Mm-hmm. I think in the East is where you and I are going to disagree on.
You're going to say Giannis.
Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak. That dude is putting up insane numbers. Yeah. Also, an underrated guy in the East, Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
Dude lights out from 3. He's shooting almost as well, if not better than Curry.
Yeah. Well, it's still early in the NBA season, and we'll continue to look at it as the weeks go on, and hopefully there will be a better picture as the games keep getting played. But once again, this has been another edition of X's and O's. I'm Jay Lennader.
And I'm Eric Bunnell.
And we'll see you next week.